So one of the really the main reason that we're able to welcome our guest tonight is thanks very much to the Mike Kelly Foundation for the Arts, who awarded us a very generous grant to bring, as it turns out, about 11 international artists here to LA over an 18-month period. October, we had the Thai filmmaker Apichatpong Verasetakul here in town for a few shows. And then Helga Fanderl is our next guest who we have here. But coming up, you will perhaps be happy to hear that we will be bringing in February the filmmaker Sergei Loznitsa for at least a couple of shows. Following that in March, we should be having Joost Rekveld, the abstract filmmaker from the Netherlands. And then in April, Malcolm Legrijs from the UK, which we're quite excited about. He hasn't been here in, I don't know, a few decades at least. And then after that, it gets a little fuzzy when people are coming, but probably in May or maybe June, we'll have Shai Heradia and Shimona Goel from India to present their own work, but also a selection of Indian experimental cinema. We're not sure how many programs yet, one or two, hopefully. And then later in the year, we'll have Claudio Caldini from Argentina. We'll have Daichi Saito and Milena Schlam from Montreal, and some other guests. So please do keep on the mailing list and keep an eye on that. And again, thanks to the Mike Kelly Foundation for supporting us to do that. So, which brings us to tonight. 5 years ago in Rotterdam, I had the extreme pleasure of seeing just a very, very tiny selection, a tiny percentage. But any percentage is a tiny one when you're talking about somebody who's made about 1,000 films. But I saw a reel of Helga's films in Rotterdam, and I was quite taken with them. And I started reading more about her and realized that she had quite a body of work. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if someday we could actually bring her to LA? And so finally, when we had the opportunity to invite all these artists, she was one of the very first people that we put on the list because we thought, well, I mean, how else are we going to see these films and share them with everybody? And so if you were here on Thursday, or here, not here, but at Echo Park Film Center on Thursday night, you saw, I think, a pretty remarkable program. And I know at least a few of you were here because I recognize you. And I wonder if some of you have came tonight specifically because you were so pleased with Thursday night. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be one of you if I weren't actually projecting the show with Helga in the back. So at any rate, tonight we have a completely different program than Thursday. Again, when you've made that many films, it's really easy to put together a lot of really different bewitching programs of work. And but to introduce what you'll see tonight, I would like to ask Helga down. Where is she? She's in the very back. Helga Fanderl from Berlin. Whatever you'd like to say.
So, good evening. Thank you, Mark, for the kind introduction. Thank you, Filmforum, Becca, Adam, and you. And I'm glad that you are here. This is the second part of the two programs I have prepared for the screenings here. I gave the title of Serendipities to those films, and I wanted to dedicate both programs to a very fine filmmaker and person who passed away in summer, Peter Hutton. In the Thursday's program, there were more Super 8 films than tonight, so I switched a little bit the proportion. We will start with one reel of Super 8, only a composed series of 7 films, and then we will have 3 reels of 60mm blow-ups. One of the reels is the black and white one in the middle that Mark has seen in Rotterdam. I repeat a little bit for those who have attended Thursday, but not too much. What I would like you to know that all of the films are made in Super 8 originally. They are all in camera edited, and they are always, let's say, documents, so to say, of real encounters with the surrounding world, with scenes or images or situations that really attracted me and and I try to go into the film. While I'm filming, I'm creating the film. So it's very intense communication with what I'm seeing. And since the films are short or very short sometimes, and I have now a body of work, from the very beginning I almost always showed a series of films together. So not the single short film as a work, but always, let's say, a small quantity that gives an overall idea of how I'm working with the medium. And this kind of composing programs has become a major and a very important part of my work with film. Since the films are not made to be shown with others that come afterwards or that were before, so the way of putting them together to make an ephemeral thing for one evening or for one screening, so it's not, you know, the accomplished only possible way of putting them together. It's just one possibility, and it's in a very felt and associative way that I try to do it every time. So I think that is the most important thing to say now, and I hope we have a good screening.
Issues to you and to all of you. From now on, I'm going to bring 3 projectors to our screen. You think 2 is enough, you know, but apparently not. So, but that perhaps is something to ask about, actually. You're working in a mode and a practice that's a little bit rarefied now, and maybe even was a little bit when you started, which is 18 frames per second, Super 8. Even the 16 millimeter requires special projection sometimes. So, I mean, does that play a role in your practice in a way? This semi-obscurity of the format?
For me, it was not obscure.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
It's only because film is vanishing, and Super 8 was the avant-garde in vanishing. So therefore, I had to deal with the technology and the problems. And it makes it more difficult for me and those who insist in making films on film stock. And it's not the part I like best, to fight with technique and with this kind of problems. But since I love to film my way I'm doing it, as you saw it, that means to handle a real camera. And since I'm doing it, as I told you, in the way that I do it in one gesture, more or less, and that I have to concentrate totally in the situation when I'm filming, making a film. So Super 8 is still the best medium for me to work with, although it's endangered. It has become the cameras break easily, the projectors break easily. But from the very beginning, I had to deal with these problems, which, So, and since I'm showing, I showed for years only Super 8, as long as I could get prints. So I didn't show so much, because it is every time it used always to be a sort of performance. So the projectors are part of the performance, and tonight it was spectacular. And I'm used to problems with the Super 8 projectors, but never ever with a 60 millimeter. So it was interesting. So I felt sorry for you, because you have good projectors. And for one reason we don't understand, both of them. Maybe I didn't like my films.
Maybe not.
I don't know. So, this kind of problems is not what I am after. What I'm after is really to be able to make films in my very concentrated and direct way of communicating with what I'm really interested in while I'm filming all together. Yeah.
Well, and at this point, your practice, not just for making the films, but for showing them, is quite defined in a way. I mean, you have a way of doing it, which has become part of the practice.
Yeah.
But early on, obviously, this wouldn't have been the case. And I'm wondering how you found your way to this way of working and showing your films.
Yeah, I have to say, when I started to make these short films, it was so new to me too. So I didn't even think at the beginning to show them immediately. I let them grow. Yeah, and when I first was invited to present films, I thought I would not show a film as a single film. I would put together a series and compose it as good as it was, as I could, and to show not only the single work but also the way I'm dealing with making films. So, and then from the very beginning as well, in public showing, it was clear that the usual space or place for film were cinemas, and Super 8 is really not a cinema format. So even though I showed in cinemas, I said I cannot project from the booth, and above all, this kind of really silent film, I was not used to it. I loved to have the sound of the projector with my films, but a softer sound. So this came out of the medium itself, of the necessity to take care of the projection. And this is one of the reasons also that with this kind of presenting my work, it was very personal, and I rather preferred even spaces which were not cinema, like in galleries or in exhibition spaces, or also in places that I found myself, which seemed more interesting to me to project my films in than the usual places. So all this came out of the necessity as I experienced it with Super 8.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and also the length of the films has been interesting to me to discover. For instance, those of you that were here, again, at Echo Park Film Center on Thursday, there was a film of this guy casting the net, which was only about 10 or 15 seconds long, I think, because that's as long as it needed to be,
yeah.
It seemed to me.
Yeah.
And a number of the films seem to have a very roughly similar running time, and I don't know if you're using the full cartridge of Super 8 in some cases.
Yeah, it
but
depends.
It varies, and
yeah,
I'm wondering how you feel out the running time for a given piece.
Yeah, there are, for example, the net, the fisherman. You didn't see the film, but I had observed this kind of work, and I thought this routine and this elegance and this practical use of this gesture. I loved it, and I was happy to catch it, and that was enough. And the man didn't like to be filmed anyway, but that would not withdraw me from trying to film sometimes. But this was enough. This was it. But there are moments when it's going on, so I go, and I even sometimes I don't realize the end of the cassette. I just go on and go on because I'm so into it. So it depends on the subject matter. It's not premeditated or there's no concept, you know. Sometimes it's totally enough, or something. It can happen that something that is happening and is finishing. It's gone. So I stop, and it's enough. If it's enough, you know. If it's not good enough, so I don't show it. Yeah, but so there's a big variety in the length, and when I make programs, I work with that too. yeah, so that, and by the way, it is interesting. Some films, which the maximum length anyway, it's 3 minutes, about 3.5 minutes with 18 frames per second. But what is interesting also, making programs, films, the how you experience the length or the duration, it depends on the context of the single film. Some films might seem very long and they can be very short, and the contrary. Yeah, so it depends what happens, how the film is structured, with respect to the pace, to the speed, to the rhythm. So it varies all the time. That is a very interesting aspect that I like when I make programs. It's never ever the same. I discover myself different ways of seeing and reading my films.
Does anyone have any questions at all?
I guess I'm just curious about your relationship to your cuts, and maybe time when you're filming these subjects. To me, my experience is that there's so many cuts in your pieces, and each one, even if they're a fraction of a second, was enough to sort of reframe the subject or a curiosity or involvement with it. And I guess
You said it, but I do.
Okay.
So it depends also, on the subject matter and on what I really want to make visible. But I reframe very often, and I change speeds also, or rhythms within the single films, and this is it comes also while I'm looking through the viewfinder, and I'm, as I told you, I really am totally concentrating on what I really want to make visible and to do. And this comes, and it's not all really defined, It is just very direct gesture response to what I'm seeing and to what I'm trying to create in the duration of a film. So to transform reality in a piece of film. And film means to shape time. And I have to do it on my mind, because there's no total control possible. I make decisions one after the other, and by the way, you can witness every single decision I am doing, because there is no change, no post-production. So what you said was what I'm doing.
I was kind of struck by the way that you film animals. I mean, the way that especially I was initially thinking about the leopard and the polar bear, and there's similar strategies of kind of repetition and almost percussive rhythm in the way that you shot it, but the overall impact, I felt quite upset by the leopard, whereas the polar bear, even though they're still like kind of swimming in the same space, I found myself projecting a different emotion on the action.
Which were your emotions?
Well, with the leopard, it was sort of this kind of feeling of being trapped, or being stuck. Whereas the polar bear, it almost felt kind of relaxing, or I don't know. I felt like a sense of pleasure. Something about, for me, the act of swimming on my back, even though I know I'm projecting these things onto an animal, that I've no sense of what their experience is. But I was curious about what your thoughts are when in that moment of filming an animal. With the peacock, it almost felt like it was comical at moments, but also it felt quite confrontational.
Yeah, I think Peacock is something else than the two other films.
Yeah,
so,
it was a different.
It was not meant to have the two films in this program, But I'm astonishing, because the starting point why I did the leopard and the polar bear was quite the same. I have observed a long time this repetitions of the movements of these trapped animals, and at the same time I followed this wonderful rhythm, you know, and the ambivalent feelings that on the one hand, when we see animals in the zoo, we know they are prisoners, but meanwhile we know also the zoos sometimes preserve animals which would not have the chance to live any longer in freedom. So anyway, this, and it's true, the movement, both movements are extremely wonderful. It's just unbelievable if you really concentrate and look for a long time. And for the leopard, I had discovered this animal, and I didn't film immediately. You know, I really got into a relationship to this. I even tried to talk to him because I saw that he could not help then to do all the same little small movements, confined. And when I started to make the film, it was very important too to show the shadow of the bars. What is it? The bars. So, but the impulse was the same. You know, this such an extraordinary animal with such a power in it and a beauty in it, and to see it making repetitions, and sure, through my cutting, again, this was meant to underline the repetition, but that helps in both films really to see all the time the wonder of this. So it's very ambivalent for me. And with the peacock, it was impressive because this, I don't know for what reason, but this peacock, I had the feeling he performed for me. And it was not easy to film. I decided, fortunately, to make no cuts, but I had decided to have it fill the whole image. So it was really a staged film, but not by me, but by the peacock. So it was very hard to. 3.5 minutes are long when you make one take, and I was in a very uncomfortable position because I wanted to have it like that, and I was not sure whether I could go through this experience. And then that, that was, as I say, it was really a communication, and that was the peacock who decided to do it with me, not the other way around. And when do you say he or it? He. And when at the end he turned around and he shows the backside of this. So and twice. So I thought it was really a good performance he did for me. So.
And at the end of the leopard, he emerges from the shadows dramatically. So you get a sense of what he might be in the wild.
Yeah, but this too, he changed. It was strange that he changed strategy for a moment, you know. Yeah. But it's good that it's there, it's true. Yeah. It seems as he was really in the jungle and could disappear, but he couldn't. He died, by the way. Oh. Because I have gone on to go there, I had really a deep relationship to this animal. And I found out about talking to the waiters. No, not waiters. The people who would take care of the animals.
Yes, your films really make me fall in love with the medium itself, the texture of film. And I was just curious. Like, what kind of religious background you might come from? Because I felt there. Even though they're very earthy and very sensuous, I was just curious if there seemed to be perhaps a religious element under some of it.
That's amazing. So, my childhood's background is Roman Catholic because I'm born in Bavaria in Germany. But from my mother's side, they were Protestant, so I was torn between two religions. But it's a long time ago. I have no idea. The only thing that I think is I have a more pantheistic attitude, that I don't believe so much in what religion, the Christian religions tell, that man is the ruler of the nature. So I think every life is worthwhile to be lived. So I feel very close to all what is animated, to the world. But I don't think of in terms of religion. It's really amazing, your question. I will think about it.
I mean, those birds, the persimmon, the first one, near the beginning, the persimmons, you start with the fruit in the trees, and then these birds begin to alight, and then they get their sustenance, and it's as if they're people getting sustenance from the earth itself. It's very poetic sense, and it just struck me as being almost religious in a way. This obsession with the sky, looking up at the sky, either birds or with that ride in the first film, the carousel. There's just admiring from the low angle, looking up at the sky. And it was just kind of an intuitive feeling I had.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you come to your subjects, and how it's over time? I'm just trying to imagine if you set out to, and travel to find subjects, or is it in your everyday?
It's more
travels?
in every day or in the place where I'm living,
Right.
But since I mostly I do not know what I will film, I really discover. And I'm surprised by subject matter. So it's very important to be totally free, bringing my camera with me and to react when it happens. And, very often I took my camera with me and I would have liked to film, but there was nothing really touching me or challenging me. So that depends, but it can be, since I'm traveling a lot, I bring my camera also. It can also be, but it's not travelogue, it's really where I am, and when something is happening, which you are, I think with every program you get a certain idea what attracts me. So on the one hand it's elements, all what is already naturally moving, although I do not reproduce movement, I create cinematic movements, but so it's this, and then sometimes already found rhythms that I observe, or patterns of what is it, textile structures, or it depends, but you have already a certain idea when you see a film program of mine. You saw a lot of films today, so gestures of people working, but in a certain way. It's not mechanical work, it's forming something, it's touching something, it's what else? I'm a little bit exhausted now, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Just along those lines, the one movie where the children are playing the games and the little girl in the red dress was so cinematic, she popped out to me, and then she ends up being the one that's pulled aside on the bench, and all of them, it changed where, I don't know that you ever planned that, but she's the one that then comes over to the side because she stood out with everyone else had muted colors on and she had the bright red dress on. So it just worked out magically.
Yeah, but this happened, I couldn't, since I do not direct, I do not, there's no mise en scène. So, but this is really a very lucky incident.
Yeah.
But sure, while I was filming, I saw the red girl because it's clear.
Right.
We react to red. But I could not foresee that she would be hurt, you know, and be out of the game. And this is a lucky. Therefore, when I choose the title for these programs, I thought it's really this lucky incident. But I have to react to this and to do something, to make something out of it, you know. But it's really serendipity most of the time. So there are subject matters or things where I can get back to, and which challenge me to do more in the same situation. But even then, when I do it, it's never the same. I cannot do the same thing. Not only because I'm not willing to do it, but I'm not the same. The situation is not really the same. But I have, for example, the persimmon tree. There is this, in this film, it seems to be a big tree. It's such a small tree in Paris, in a garden. And when I discovered first, and I think the one, no, it was not, I'm not sure. But I think even the one you saw was the very first that I did. Because I bumped into it, and I thought it was amazing to see the birds eating the ripe fruit. They eat them only when they are totally ripe, and they eat them very quickly. In a couple of hours, it's gone. And this happens only once a year. So every year I went back with my camera, and I always was hoping, because it's in winter time, that once there would be snow. And it has become rare, snow in Paris. And when there was snow, the garden was closed down, so I couldn't film the snow with the birds and the fruit. So, but I returned every year, and every time it was a challenge to experience this situation. And every film is different. It has the same subject matter, but it's different. And this one, to give you one example. But it's not so many subject matters where I can really go back, because when it's unique, to capture a certain moment, what happens is only in this moment, it's impossible. If I would not film immediately, it would never ever happen again. Like for these girls in this garden, I really thought it was great how they dealt with the trees, like in a scenery. So, but never ever a game like that happened again. So,
were you aware that the rhythm of that game with the girls emulates actually the rhythm of cinema itself, with the discrete holding for a moment a position, and then moving the next frame, and then holding it for a second, and then moving it. So there was that intermittent motion, and it sort of...
You mean stop motion?
Stop motion, yes.
Yeah, stop motion is my method, more or less,
I mean, even the game itself, with the girls stopping at the trees, so the rhythm was sort of reflexive, I felt.
Yeah. I did not particularly think of it in this moment. I think it's a part of my cinematic approach to know that film is not movement. You create movement, and in the in our brain too. So when I animate things, but I agree it's a case. But I don't remember whether I was so concentrated in how to, because they are so quick.
Yeah, but
so I had to react and to find the best possible way to respond to this game, and that is what I tried. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know quite how to ask this, but I want to suggest that I sometimes had the feeling that you were actually filming a moment that happened before the moment you were actually filming. And I thought of that particularly in the scene with the girls playing, because to me it seemed like something out of the 40s. And in fact, maybe even earlier. There was something about the quality of the color that reminded me of autochromes. And I thought that this was really uncanny. That was, that it gave the impression of being a moment that was even earlier than its literal moment. And I think that can be said about some of the other films as well. And sort of in keeping with this, at least the scenes of the waterfalls are timeless. They would look the same 100 years from now. They look the same 100 years ago. Although I guess when you pan up, you see buildings in the background of the one. But anyway, I was struck by this question of recorded time as opposed to like suggested time, is one way to put it.
I'm not quite sure whether I understood everything, but you mean, for example, as if I would already, before I shoot something, I already have it on my mind.
No, it's as if it's the literal moment plus an earlier moment at the same time. It's as if the literal moment contains or somehow represents an earlier moment.
But a much earlier moment.
Much, yeah.
Like a historical
I
moment.
like it as you say it, but I do not know whether I can do it, this way.
Well,
Maybe it's there, but it's not. I do not decide it, It. But I think it's interesting.
I know you edited camera. Do you? Is there extra footage? I mean, is the editing in the camera, is the duration of all of these films it? Is that all that there is?
Only, there is
Okay.
no. It's, you know the Super 8 cassette. Right?
Yeah, it's a 3 minute.
It's a thing. It's with 18 frames per second. It's
Yeah.
exactly 3 minutes and 25 seconds.
So you have a series of films on a reel, on a cassette. So you shoot one.
Oh no, you mean different cameras with different reels?
No, I mean just on a single cassette.
Like outtakes?
No, I'm just saying. I'm asking. Would you have a series of these films on a single cassette? Since some of them are very short.
Not necessarily. So what happens if, for example, if a shot is very short? Shot is very short. So, and then I don't know, because I cannot continue immediately to do something, So I make black leader in the cassette, So to make sure that there's a pause. So when I really want to do a new film, I can put it out and can put it back, and so I lose when it's developed a part. So, but this anyway, it's already clear that it's finished when I do the black leader. But sometimes I leave it inside, make a black leader, and then I know I have less time, and depending on the subject matter, I have to decide. But that is what I do. So it's not meant to make several films in a row. Sometimes I'm frustrated, I would prefer not to have this problem. But sometimes it's great just to have this precious little glimpse of something. But this either I cannot plan, it happens.
So to follow up on that, this is another question that's kind of related. You have a huge body of work, but how many films have you completed, right, that you actually discarded, that you don't show, that you don't consider to be
Yeah,
completed
so-
works that you would, like what's the percentage in
Yeah,
relationship to the
it's hard
completed
to tell,
ones?
because years ago, I throw away films that I thought were not what they were meant to be, and then, and I don't even remember how many. What was clear is that I decided which film I really thought might be worthwhile to present to others. And now I didn't do that, and because I found out, before I made a big move from Frankfurt to abroad, to Paris, I had to review everything, and I gave all the originals to an archive. So I had to see all of what I have done until then. And then I viewed, really I projected literally my originals that I had never shown before, and I found out that the pieces I couldn't understand why I didn't accept them. So because my point of view of viewing what I'm doing changed too, sometimes. So I decided to throw away really only when it's, when what I wanted to do did not work because the subject matter went away, or when there was trouble, and unfortunately it happens in a while, thick dirt or dust in it, which became the main subject matter, which
Right.
it's awful because I have made wonderful films in there. So therefore, now, and there, I did never ever like to talk so much about the quantity of my films, because this was still always a process of recognition or questioning, or I don't know what. So what I found out in the last year and a half, because I worked out with somebody who suggested to do a catalogue raisonné of my films, that I found out about the number. So, and now the number is public, and I suffer from this and I found out when we made this, that I had shown from all of this maybe a third. So I can answer your question: is it an outtake forever, or is it changing? I think a part of it is changing. So it is, the percentage is not important because it's not. It's the practice, But I thought before I die, I should throw away those who I really think are not worthwhile to give away. So, but this is quite recent, all this counting.
What's the date range of the films we saw tonight?
Could you please repeat?
What's the date range of the films we saw tonight? What's the oldest and what's the most current?
So
or what are the years? they cover?
Today, actually, I forgot, I made one little change in the program. In the first Super 8 reel, the second film in the first Super 8 reel after the carousel, there is green water plants.
Yeah.
This is the one I did this year. That's the most recent one. And the oldest today, oh my gosh, there was many of them. Maybe it's the girls, but I'm not sure. It's 1999, 95, what?
93.
93?
93. That's what you told me when we
Oh, I told you. So, because I forget about the dates, because in my making programs it doesn't matter. Since it's changing all the time. So, yeah, but today it was the two.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was curious, the black and white, there's that dance of, I guess, triangular tops of Were those water towers in New York City?
Mm-hmm.
They were. I've never seen those before. I lived in New York for a while.
I saw it only once.
You only saw it once, because it was fantastic. It was like a dance of...
Yeah. That's why Stefan filmed it.
Yeah.
Well, we should call it a night unless anybody has one more burning question. Well, I want to thank you for coming all the way to LA. I'm sorry I didn't have a quiet.